Welcome, everybody. Cue the Amazon National Anthem. Welcome to the 2017 State of Amazon Bookselling Address with Commander Bookseller-in-Chief, Peter Valley, that's me. Now, why am I doing this video? Well, because we are seeing an unprecedented level of low morale in the Amazon bookselling scene, and it is my job as Commander Bookseller-in-Chief, Peter Valley, to restore confidence to this once great kingdom. And if all of this is just too pretentious for you to bear, and believe me, I'm with you, I have an alternate title for this webinar. It is 3 reasons that now is the time to get into Amazon bookselling. I am going to reveal some surprising facts and new revelations. I'm going to talk about separating truth from hype in a time of record-breaking low morale amongst Amazon sellers. Now, I'm referring, of course, to all of the seismic changes that have happened in the last 12 months to Amazon. Not just FBA, but the entire Amazon selling landscape has undergone some seismic changes, and they're not all bad. Now, the main point I want to get across in this video is that with every, quote, disaster, there comes great opportunity. So in this vacuum that's created, we are seeing some unprecedented opportunity, and that is what I'm going to convey to you in this video. So here's what I set out to accomplish in this video, and I promise I will accomplish exactly this. So in part 1, we're going to talk about why morale is at an all-time low amongst Amazon sellers, exactly how the book-selling landscape has changed in 2017. I'm going to talk about why each major change is not as bad as you think and actually brings with it tremendous opportunity. In part 2 of this video, I'm actually going to talk about the secret ways that things have actually gotten better and why nobody is talking about this stuff. And I think the last one is going to absolutely shock you. Now, at the very, very end of this video, I have an announcement. It is a fairly big announcement. It may, in fact, be the biggest announcement I've ever made during my, what has it been, 4 or 5 years of doing the FBA Mastery website. So you want to stay tuned for that. So in this video, I have to mention this is only part 1 in a 3-part series. So over the next week, you're going to be getting 2 more videos packed full of awesome content. Now, you know I rarely do videos. So when I do a video, this is a big deal. This is a big event. It means I have something that I just have to say, and I need to be able to tell you directly, not in the form of an article. So this is kind of an event. So this 3-part series, I'm calling this my synthesis series, okay? So in this one, we're going to talk about the why. In part 2, we're going to talk about the what. And in part 3, we're going to talk about the how. Now, all of this will become clear, so please stay tuned for the 2 videos. I'm going to send you one in a couple days, and I'm going to send you the 3rd video a few days after that. And this is going to all kind of tie together into one big major theme to sort of bring us all back to the fundamentals. That's what I'm trying to accomplish with this video series. So why is a state of Amazon bookselling address needed right now? Well, as I referenced earlier, in the last 12 months, Amazon has pummeled Amazon sellers with a rapid-fire succession of changes. It's been pretty brutal. So not all these have happened in 2017. I'm speaking specifically in the last 12 months as of the time I'm recording this, so going into the end of 2016 as well. And most of these changes aren't what we would call as good, but I'm sure you'll be convinced by the end of this video that all of them present huge, huge opportunities for those few of us who are willing to say, okay, what is the opportunity in this disaster? So here's a list of everything that's changed. Now, I'm sure that I'm missing a couple of big ones because there's been so many in the last year. But here is, as far as what I can remember, what's happened in the last 12 months, the big changes we've seen with selling on Amazon. So here we go. Number 1, long-term storage fees now applying to all books and media. This one is brutal. So you remember, for the longest time, the first unit in a SKU was accepted from long-term storage fees. Well, about a year ago, all that changed. Now, every January, or was it February and August, we were getting hit with a big, big chunk of change taken out of our Amazon accounts. So this is significant. Number 2, new textbook restrictions. So, you remember these tremors started to happen about last February, March, where some sellers were finding they could not list books in new condition or like new condition. This actually extended outside of textbooks, and then certain sellers were also restricted from selling certain textbooks. Now, this ended up not being the biggest deal, but it does create some uncertainty, not with Amazon not actually revealing what we are or are not allowed to sell. buy box changes were pretty significant. On the good end of things, Amazon opened up the buy box in new condition to third-party sellers, right? So that was a good thing. But the bad side was that Amazon started to do a lot of weird things with its algorithm. It started to give the buy box to non-FBA offers a lot more often. There was just a lot of shakeups as far as the buy box went. A lot of people who had the buy box eligibility for a long time found they didn't. And a lot of other sellers were staring at their Amazon Seller Central dashboard and finding they were having the buy box 1 hour and not the next, and then have it back again, and it was just, there's all sorts of fluctuations happening. Number 4, new shipping requirements. These are mostly in the annoying category, not the catastrophic, but Amazon requiring box content requirements and the new book rate requirements that we just started seeing implemented very, very recently. And the big one, the monster, the tidal wave that engulfed us all, is new FBA fees that ended up hitting lower end books pretty significantly. Not as much on the higher end books, but the lower end books, when we're talking about $10 and below, those our profit margins took quite a hit. That is why the state of the Amazon bookselling address for the year 2017 is sorely needed right now. So let's go through each of these changes and talk about kind of what they mean. Okay, so the first change, long-term storage fees now applying to all books and media. So how do you respond to this? I want to go through each of these and talk about the best way to respond. So the best way to respond to new long-term storage fees is simply to set price minimums for poorly ranked books. So again, if it's a book that you think will not sell in the next 6 months, or there's a realistic expectation that it will not sell in the next 6 months, hey, just go ahead and say, I'm not going to ship a book in if it's valued at less than $10. That should sufficiently buffer you against long-term storage fees, or whatever that number you come to is, maybe 12, maybe 15, whatever your comfort zone is. But that really, there's really no need to make it any more complicated than that. So remember, it doesn't so much matter if you lose money on one particular book. All that matters in this game is that you make money in aggregate. It's just like the stock market, right? Next change, new textbook restrictions. Well, it's pretty simple to simply avoid listing books in new or like new condition. That was never more than, I don't even know, I think 10% would even be generous to say it was more than 10% of my business books in like new or new condition. I think it was probably a lot less than that. And if you come across a book that ends up being restricted that's not a new or like new condition, because again, Amazon is restricting certain textbooks from being listed, you can go ahead and list those books off Amazon, places like eBay. It's not ideal, but hopefully most of the time you shouldn't actually be losing money. Okay, so cost of doing business. Next change is buy box changes. Well, I've been telling booksellers for years to not build a business strategy around the buy box ever. Okay, don't ever build a business strategy around something you can't control. The buy box has always been a secret formula that Amazon does not reveal to us. We can't control it. They can take it away from us capriciously at will. So focus on things you can control. And again, even if you don't have buy box eligibility, this should not make or break a business. I think the buy box and the importance of the buy box is very, very overstated when it comes to Amazon selling, especially books. Next change is new shipping requirements. Honestly, this doesn't affect the bottom line that much. It's just simply annoying. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it much more than that. And then new FBA fees. Well, how do people respond to this? Because this is huge, right? So most people, including myself, raised their minimum selling price. Mine went from $7.50, that was a minimum I was willing to sell a book for prior to the new fees, to $10. And both of those now, again, if you sell a book FBA for $10, that should generally get you somewhere within range of a $3 payout. $3 has always been my minimum payout that I'm willing to accept. And then also the way to respond to this is to understand the numbers and understand this impacts higher priced books dramatically less than lower priced books, okay? So if you're selling a book for $8, yes, you will feel these new FBA fees. If you're selling a book for $20, you'll barely notice, okay? I think the difference when you're selling a book for like 20, 25 bucks in terms of last year versus now with the new FBA fees, it comes out to a difference of like 15% in your margins, which is not insignificant, but it's not a deal breaker, right? It's not as catastrophic as people make it out to be. Okay, so now, because this synthesis series that I'm doing, this video and the next two videos, because this is all sort of back to the fundamentals theme we're working with, let's do a quick refresher course before we get to the good news and the opportunity in all of this. Let's do a refresher course. Why do we sell books to begin with? It should not be random. It's not random for me. Hopefully you're not buying books or not selling books because Peter Valley told you to sell books. I'm sure that's not the case. Man, what a dummy you'd be if that was. But we're selling books for a very deliberate reason. Actually, a few reasons. Okay, we're not selling toys. Maybe a lot of us are, but personally, I'm not selling much in any other categories because books are simply the best category to sell on Amazon. I'm going to tell you exactly why. If you don't know, let's talk about what these are. So number one, the reason I sell books, the huge profit margins. Now, this is the only one of the three I'm going to mention that actually is impacted by all the changes that we've seen in the last year. Okay, so this is the only one. Yes, our margins have been impacted, mostly only on lower end books. As I said, you really don't feel these fees that much when it comes to higher end books. So understanding that is very key. But yes, we have been impacted. But in just a short minute, I'm going to get to exactly why these fees don't impact us nearly as much as you think, because these numbers are very deceptive. And I'm going to throw some surprises at you that I think will leave you feeling extremely optimistic about the future of book selling on Amazon. Okay, number two is the massive abundance of books. Books are everywhere. As soon as you sort of attune your focus to them, you will see books everywhere. I was just at the law library at the university near my house the other day, and they had a shelf like hidden kind of like in the entry, but it's like way off to the side. I mean, I made $1,000 just literally just glancing over at this bookshelf and buying a bunch of used law books. Next up, cheap. Books are cheap. Everywhere they go, everywhere you go, everywhere you find used books, they're generally going to be cheap, right? That's a great reason that we're selling books on Amazon. Okay, so you're probably thinking, Peter Valley, you just gave me a lot of bad news. You just told me that my profit margins have dropped. What the heck kind of State of a Union address is this? Well, I keep promising you and drum rolling the optimistic side of this. So I'm going to tell you now. 3 reasons why now is the time to get into Amazon book selling. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying this is the best time in history to get into Amazon book selling. That was actually when I got it started in 2007. This is true. People don't even believe this. This is 100% true. When I got started selling on Amazon in 2007, you literally did not have a book scanner. I did not look up books at all. I could literally eyeball books and make money the majority of the time simply looking at a book and buying books completely blind, knowing nothing about the book selling market. I actually used to be able to make money doing that without any equipment, any scanning apps or anything. Now, I would say fast forward about a year after that, that became impossible. So I kind of caught the tail end of this. But yeah, there was a time when you could just literally just grab a random book and you would make money enough of the time that if you bought blind, you could actually make a profit. So I'm going to reveal right now some surprising facts and new revelations and separate the truth from hype in a time of record-breaking low morale amongst Amazon booksellers. Reason number one, that now is the time to get into selling books on Amazon. Book sales are actually going up, and I have the stats to prove it. Print book sales continue to rise for the 3rd straight year. Yes, this is a headline from just a few months ago from CNN. It says, real books are back. Ebook sales plunged nearly 20%. Do you remember just a few years ago, all Amazon booksellers were freaking out thinking that their ship was sinking because ebooks were going to take over? That did not happen. And actually, the reverse trend is happening. Books, hard copy books, real book sales are going up. They're going way up. A couple more examples. This is a headline literally from, Publishers Weekly. Print book sales rose again in 2016. Next one, largest gains. This is actually a snippet from that article. The largest gains came in the adult nonfiction category. Now, if you've been selling books on Amazon for any length of time, what is the #1 category, a broad category of books that we sell on Amazon? Adult nonfiction. Okay, so the books that we primarily sell, those are going up, sales of those are going up even more than any other category. This is very, very huge, and this trend continues to go up dramatically. Reason number 2 that now is the time to get into selling books on Amazon is that Prime subscribers are skyrocketing. So now this is a reason to get into being an FBA seller and selling books via FBA on Amazon, which I assume most of you are, or most of you are interested in. This is the actual headline from this chart here. The number of Prime members in the United States as of June 2017 has risen to 85 million. Now look down to that chart just a little bit, just a few short handful about a year and a half ago. It was 54 million in December of 2015. As of towards the end here of 2017, we are now up to 85 million. That is up nearly 60% in the last 18 months. Now, if you feel hit by the new FBA fees, I want you to think about this for a second. What if someone came to you and said, your profits are going to drop by half? Now, that's not actually happened to us, right? But let's just say that happened. Let's just say Amazon said, your profits are going to be cut in half. Okay, that's doomsday, right? You're freaking out. Now, what if Amazon then said, but your customers are going to double? That you end up making the same amount of money, right? In theory, I'm oversimplistic math, right? But if your customers doubled, but your profits are cut in half, your revenue remains exactly the same, right? Well, this is what the trend that we're seeing now. Your profits didn't double and your profits didn't get cut in half either. Your customers didn't double and your profits did not get cut in half either. But your customer base, remember, for selling FBA, it's Prime subscribers that are our customers primarily, right? They have gone up nearly 60% in the last 18 months. So whatever hit you took in terms of your profit margins should be largely offset by the increase of customers. Now, I want to be clear. This is not hard math here. It isn't exactly a one-for-one translation, right? It's not like every 10% of our customers that go up, that offsets 10% of our revenues that may have gone down. That's not exactly how it works. But this number is extremely significant in offsetting the whatever reduced margins we saw on lower end books after the new FBA fees. Okay, this is really, really huge. And all I hear in 2017 is people talking about the new FBA fees hit my profit margins on lower end books, but nobody is talking about how our customers are going way, way, way up. Reason number 2.5 that now is the time, and actually this is a heavy disclaimer here, this is not a reason that now is the time to get into selling on Amazon. That's why I made it a 2.5. This is something that simply lessens the impact of the new fees and all the other bad things we've seen in 2017, okay? FBA prices have gone way up. Now, let me explain this before I'm sure you're scratching your head right now. So, before the fee increases of early 2017, virtually all but the most well-ranked books that had over 200 copies for sale were absolutely saturated with $4 FBA offers. I'm sure you remember this. It wasn't that long ago. All the Merchant Fulfilled books were a penny, and all the FBA offers, there'd be 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 FBA offers, all selling for $4, oftentimes at a loss. There was just a glut of lowball FBA offers when it came to books that had a large number of used copies for sale, right? Today, fast forward, just 6-8 months, today it is not uncommon for books that have 1,000 used offers or more for the lowest FBA offer to be actually in the $7 range. So the FBA offers have gone way, way up. In terms of the price of the lowest FBA offers have gone way, way up. Now, what you're thinking is actually true, which is you still net about the same amount on a $7 FBA book as you do a $4 FBA book. I think you probably make a little bit more. But the point is, the price of FBA offers on average has gone up significantly. So what dominates the conversation is that new Amazon fees have eroded the profits on low-end books. This is what all the sort of doomsday talk you hear, right? What is missing from the conversation that I don't hear people talking about is that FBA prices have gone way up. Now, it doesn't exactly, and this is the point, this is why I said reason 2.5, it does not exactly offset the decrease or the increase in the FBA fees, right? It doesn't offset that directly, but it is a mitigating factor. Okay, so if the net profit on a hardcover book dropped 50% at an $8 sales price, keep in mind that same $8 FBA book is probably now selling for $10 or more. Okay, so the FBA offers have inched upward to offset somewhat the increased FBA fees. I don't hear anyone talking about this. So the takeaway of all this is, and I threw a lot at you, if I could put a bow on this in one sentence, the increase in FBA prices does not completely offset the new FBA fees of 2017, okay? But they do mitigate their damage significantly, okay? So now you see what I'm doing here now with these points is I'm sort of chipping away at the impact of new FBA fees. So I said, okay, book sales are going up. Okay, that chips a little bit, that sort of offsets a little bit of the increased FBA fees. Then Prime subscribers are going way, way up. That offsets the FBA fees even more. And then FBA prices are going up, which offsets the new FBA fees even more. And so now we're inching back towards a place where maybe the impact of new FBA fees aren't that significant. And we're going to get into something even bigger here. This is the one I'm most excited about, okay? This is an FBA Mastery Peter Valley exclusive. Actually, this is a Zen Arbitrage developer exclusive, because I'll get into exactly what I mean by this in a second. I can't take full credit for this. Competition is plummeting, and I'm going to, I would dare say beyond a reasonable doubt, give you some pretty hard evidence this is the case. So there is strong evidence that all the changes of 2017 have caused a mass number of Amazon sellers to actually leave the business, freeing up our competition and reducing that competition dramatically. Now, this might ring a bell to some of you. This is actually an update on an article I did on FBA Mastery about, I think it's about 6 months ago, where I ran the numbers, and because I have an online book arbitrage tool called Zen Arbitrage, and we store tons and tons and tons of historical Amazon data. And so what I did is I had my developer dig around in that data and bring up the number of used offers on a set of books, a list of 5 books, back in, I think it was like May or something, versus just before the new FBA fees hit. And I was showing some strong evidence the number of sellers dropped dramatically. Well, I have even more evidence, a lot more evidence, actually 2 giant new pieces of evidence to support this theory that our competition in 2017 is actually plummeting, meaning we are up against a dramatically less number of Amazon sellers, particularly FBA sellers. Nobody else has been able to sort of evidence this the way that I'm about to. So this is where it gets really, really interesting. So the evidence here, it falls into 2 categories. Okay, the evidence that FBA sellers and Amazon sellers in general have decreased dramatically is twofold. Okay, it's anecdotal, which I'll get into first, and then the hard data, which is the most exciting stuff that I'll get to next. And then after that, I got a big announcement, so stay tuned. Okay, so anecdotal evidence. Okay, anecdotal meaning the weaker of the evidence, but not worth, still worth mentioning. So, I've been selling on Amazon for 10 years, over 10 years at this point. I know Amazon sellers, okay? I know our pulse, I know our temperament, I know the culture of this community that we're in. I read your emails every single day. And as soon as the new FBA fees hit, these were back, when was this? Like back in, I think, February, the new FBA fees hit. I remember thinking, here we go. Everybody is going to jump ship. Okay, the fact is that Amazon sellers, and I love you guys, I really do, but we are a sensitive bunch, we're emotional, and we are skittish, and we are very prone to freak out, I would say unnecessarily, quite a bit. Okay, yes, it gives us character, but it works to our detriment quite a bit as well. So when I saw the new fees come in, and when they finally hit, and I shook my head and said everybody's going to jump ship, I honestly was a little bit excited for this, and here's why. I knew that those of us who did not throw in the towel, those of us who rode this out, those of us who asked, how can we adapt, instead of, hey, where's the fire exit, I'm out of here, we would reap the benefits of the decreased competition and the dramatically less competitive Amazon selling environment that we would find ourselves in if we could ride out the storm. So, when is the time to buy in the stock market? You probably heard this a million times. The time to buy is when everyone is selling. So that is now the climate that we find ourselves in, where everybody's jumping ship, and that creates a giant vacuum and a lot of opportunity for the rest of us. And I'm going to show some interesting stuff here in just a second. So that seemed to be happening. Okay, so when the new fees hit, that exodus seemed to be happening. I got tons, again, this is the anecdotal part, right? But I did get tons of emails from sellers who said, Peter, I am out of here. I got tons of Zen Arbitrage members, my book arbitrage tool, tons of people saying, hey, I'm out, I can't handle it, I'm gone. So considering all this, why was I actually reveling in this so much? Well, the fact is that decreased FBA competition means higher prices for the rest of us. This is real basic economics 101, right? The lower the supply, the higher the prices, right? That's just super basic. So the lower the competition, the more the prices are going to go up, okay? And that's kind of what I touched on a second ago. So I was pretty excited about this, and it's just fewer sellers that we have to compete against when we're pricing. What causes prices to go down is too many sellers. So the fewer sellers, the less prices go down. So what we saw is a lot of smaller sellers jumping ship. And when it comes to mega sellers, the big sellers, the ones that we kind of love to hate and hate to love, actually mostly just love to hate, or mostly just hate, their entire business model was decimated. I mean, Amazon mega sellers over the last 9 months are losing their minds. They are freaking out because their entire business model has been completely decimated. FBA mega sellers specifically, they have for the longest time, their entire business model was based on holding that top spot in the listings, pricing $3.99 higher than the lowest merch fulfilled offer, and eking out a 20, 30, 40 cent profit. That entire model is destroyed with the new FBA fees, and mega sellers are absolutely freaking out. We've seen a couple of them vanish. We've seen others switch from FBA to merchant fulfilled, but the entire model that they've relied on for so long is totally been destroyed. So, but as I said, the anecdotal evidence is just that, right? It's just anecdotal. None of this really makes a strong case that our competition is plummeting. So how do we measure whether this exodus is actually truly happening in terms of data? So let me recap this theory just once again before we get to that data. Amazon changes of 2017 have caused a mass number of Amazon sellers to flee the business. Okay, that's the thesis, right? Now we have to prove it. So here is the data. So, and this is going back, I'm revisiting an article with a bunch of new data. This is not just rehashing old stuff. An article that I wrote on FBA Mastery about, I think it was last May. So a few months after the new FBA fees hit, I devised this experiment. I said, what if I could take a sample of books and look at the number of listings for those books both before the fees hit and then after the fees hit, and see if the number has dropped dramatically. And then do that with several books to get a sort of a statistically more sound data set, to just at least see if there was some evidence that the number of sellers have actually dropped. So in other words, if there was 1,000 sellers selling a book in February before the fees hit, and then in May it had dropped to 800, well, that's interesting, right? There's some evidence that the number of sellers have dropped dramatically. But I didn't know if that was the case, so I had to dig into the data. So if there was any large difference in the number of sellers before the fees and after the fees, it would be strong evidence that large number of sellers have left the Amazon bookselling business. So I have this book arbitrage tool called Zen Arbitrage, and I called our lead developer and I asked him, I said, this is back in May or so, I said, hey, do we store historical data for all the 21 million books in our database? And he said, actually, we do. And he said, I can get you the number of offers for sale for any book at any time going back 2 years. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So my plan was to pick 5 of the most common books on Amazon. Okay, so I wanted to pick books that have an absolutely massive number of used copies for sale, like somewhere in range of 1,000 at any given time. These are the most saturated books on Amazon. Okay, so what I did is I literally just Googled best-selling books of the 1990s, and I came up with a list of 5 of the best-selling books for the entire decade of the 90s. Okay, so these are books that sold millions and millions of copies. So here is a list. Book called A Million Little Pieces. And by the way, if you don't recognize these titles, I promise you, if you saw the covers, you would know these books. These are books that you see every single place that you source used books. Okay, I promise you. Next one was The Bridges of Madison County. I think that book is actually from the 80s. Next one was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Next one was The Chamber by John Grisham. And the last is The Lovely Bones by, I don't know how you pronounce that, Sebald. Okay, so these books all sold millions of copies, right? They all have somewhere around 1,000 copies at any given time for sale on Amazon. So I want to get a large number so we can detect any changes, any drops a little more easily, okay? So here is the hard data, and this is updated, okay? This is not rehashed from the article I did a bunch of months ago. So the total number of sellers in January of 2017, which is just before the fees hit, was 1,274. After the fees hit, it dropped to 1,142, and today that number is 941 for the same book. That is a drop of 26%. So you're probably thinking, Peter Valley, that's just one book. That's not really strong evidence of anything. Fair. So let's move on to the next book. Bridges of Madison County, total number of sellers in January before the fees, 1,600. After the fees, 1,400. And total number of sellers this week is 1,315. That is a drop of almost exactly 20%. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, before the fees, almost 1,300. After the fees, around 1,000 this week. Actually, not much of a drop at all, but still also around 1,000. That is a drop of 21% since before the new fees. So again, since before the new fees and after the fees, the number of sellers selling this book has dropped 20%. Every one of these has been over 20% so far, right? Next up is The Lovely Bones. Total number of sellers before the fees, 981. After 895, this week 770. That is a drop of 22%. Next up is the Chamber. Before the fees, close to 1,000. After the fees, around 900. And today, about 9 months after the fees, it has dropped to 800. Okay, a drop of 23%. So far, every single one of these books has seen a dramatic 20+% drop in the number of sellers selling these books. Okay, so I just covered 5 books, right? Every single one of them has seen a drop of 20 to 23%. I think one was 26%. Anyway, over 20% for each book, okay? 5 books. I think this is some fairly strong evidence, but I think a lot of people are going to be asking, well, okay, well, these are seasonal fluctuations. This doesn't prove anything because you're taking a sample set in January of 2017, then another sample set in May of 2017, and then a sample set in August of 2017. These are all different months, and the book market can be seasonal, so that doesn't prove anything. And there's just a lot of people that really just they just have to believe that the sky is falling no matter what, despite the data that I just presented. So I wanted to give something just to those people to show them, hey, there is something to this, okay? This is not just a seasonal fluke. This is real. So I dug even further into the data. Let's go ahead and look at these same books just 12 months ago, okay? So if you're thinking, hey, these are seasonal fluctuations, I'm giving you the data for exactly 1 year ago as of the time I'm recording this, okay? So today, 941 copies of A Million Little Pieces. Exactly 12 months ago, 1,389. That is a total drop of 32%. So we're actually seeing the drop is even more pronounced. Do you see the trend here? The more time that goes on, the fewer number of sellers selling these books, and the drop is actually increasing. The trend is actually just going upward the further back you go. Bridges of Madison County, today 1,315. Exactly 12 months ago, 1,724, a drop of 24%. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, today around 1,000. 12 months ago, 1,300, a drop of 23%. The Chamber, today is about 811. 12 months ago is 1,042. That's a drop of 22%. Lovely Bones, today is 770. 12 months ago, 993. That is a drop of 23%. What do you guys think about that? I'm considering this fairly strong evidence that the total number of sellers has dropped dramatically, possibly 20+%. However, there's going to be a few of you left, a few of you people that just have to cling to this idea that this is not good news. It's too good to be true. It can't be this good. The news can't be so good that 20% of our competition has vanished. There could not have been an exodus that much. Some of you just want to believe so badly in bad news. So some of those people might say, well, sure, well, you're only looking at lower end books, right? These are books that are selling for relatively cheaply because they have such a high number of used copies for sale. My point is, this is even better news. This is exactly where we want our competition to decrease. Cheap books is exactly where we feel the new FBA fees the most. Sub $10 books is the only price range where the new FBA fees really hurt us. So if we're seeing a decrease in 20% amongst cheaper books, that is even better news than what I'd initially indicated. Now, so is this the Great Purge? Are we seeing a mass exodus of 20+% of sellers from Amazon bookselling? Well, listen, I presented you the numbers. You would go ahead and decide. Okay, that's totally on you. It would be irresponsible of me to deliver this as conclusive proof. I think the numbers speak for themselves, but hey, listen, go ahead, interpret those numbers as you will. But I have even another theory that I think is even more positive that makes all this even better news for FBA sellers in the future. I have one more theory based on the following premises, okay? So I hope we can accept these premises. For one, the decrease in sellers is fee-driven. I think we can assume that the new fees are responsible for the decrease in the number of sellers. Again, 20% or more. And number two, that FBA sellers are most impacted by the fees. Now, there were some new fees from merchant fulfilled sellers back in February, but they were not nearly as dramatic as they were for FBA sellers. Okay, so if we can accept that the number of sellers has gone down because of the new fees and that FBA sellers are most impacted by these fees, it would logically follow there's an even greater decrease in FBA competition, well in excess of that 20% that we see across the board. Now keep in mind, those numbers I gave you, those were FBA and merchant fulfilled sellers combined. Ins and arbitrage and the data that I drew from to bring you this, We don't actually know the number of FBA sellers. We don't have that data stored. We don't track that. So I can't tell you specifically the number of FBA sellers has changed from this amount to this amount for these books in this amount of time. I can't give you that data. But if the drop in sellers is fee driven, then there must be an even greater decrease in FBA sellers. Even more FBA sellers must have jumped ship than merch fulfilled sellers. So again, I'm not presenting this as proof, but there would be a strong indication that the decrease in FBA competition has gone up even well in excess of 20%. So let's recap. I gave you a lot of stuff in my 2017 State of Amazon Bookselling Address. Okay, so let's recap the current state of Amazon bookselling, exactly where things stand, and exactly what has changed and what has not changed. Okay, the supply. These are all the things that affect. These are the basic fundamentals that affect our ability to sell on Amazon. The supply of books is exactly the same, right? The supply of books out there in the used book selling market is exactly the same. If anything, it's gone up because there's possibly fewer sellers, as I presented evidence for, right? So the supply of books out there, exactly the same in 2017. There is an actual increased demand for books, as I've shown. There is an increasing number of customers, Prime customers specifically, buying our FBA eligible offers, our Prime eligible offers, and there is decreased competition. All of this is the current state of Amazon bookselling in 2017. All of this is very good news. And this is kind of the big crescendo here in why now is the time to get into selling books on Amazon, or why it is not the time to be jumping ship, okay? So I want you to stay tuned. I have an announcement here in just a second, but I want you to stay tuned for part 2 in this synthesis video series that I'm rolling out this week. But in part 2, I'm going to give a huge, this is going to be the biggest video I've done yet, a complete 30,000 foot view giving the complete anatomy of an Amazon bookselling operation and exactly how to optimize every single aspect. I'm going through what I call the 10 pillars of an Amazon business, at least 2 of which most sellers don't even know exist and totally omit altogether. So this video is going to be for anyone that is either totally new or anyone that has any sticking point in their business and wonders what might be wrong. I'm actually going to go through step by step every single aspect from start to finish, from launching to scaling an Amazon bookselling operation, and exactly how to optimize each one. This video is going to be massive. So, and then in part 3, well, that's going to be top secret, but man, that one's going to be good. And I'm going to give you an unveiling. Let's see, how much can I reveal here? I'm going to talk about how to increase a formula, a conservative formula to increase your profits, your revenue, $5,000 a month with a few basic tweaks. Okay, so now it's actually not very secret anymore. But then there's going to be a big unveiling at the end of that as well. So, okay, here's my announcement. Put your ear to the computer. Do you hear a storm brewing somewhere in the distance of the internet? Well, next week I'm going live with the largest and most ambitious Amazon training that I've ever created to date. This is something that I've been working on for, it's been about 1.5 years in the making. So think about this for a second. What would it feel like to have a complete video course covering every single step of launching and optimizing an Amazon bookselling operation from start to finish, from launching to scaling? What would it feel like to have all the guesswork taken out of building a machine that turns books into cash? And what would it feel like to have access to 35 videos that cover every single aspect of this operation? It's called Amazon Altitude. This is my magnum opus. This is the synthesis of virtually everything that I've learned in 10 years of selling books on Amazon in one massive video course, 35 videos, 9 modules. This thing is an absolute monster. It is my magnum opus. It goes live at 7 a.m. Eastern Time on October 25th. In the next video, I'm going to give you a link that you're going to bookmark, and you're going to want to be awake when this thing goes live, because I'm going to have some special limited bonuses, stuff that you have to, it's like, get it while you can. And if you've been through any of these product releases with me before, you know when I release something as a bonus and I tell you it's going to go away very quickly, it always goes away, right? So this is extremely time sensitive. I like to reward people who take quick action, so there will be some insane bonuses. Like, I'm stacking on the value so high for this, so I really look forward to sharing this with you. October 25th, 7 a.m. Okay, you guys, this concludes the 2000. Hold on, I gotta get in a character here. presidential voice, Peter. Okay, Peter Valley. Okay. This concludes the 2017 State of Amazon Bookselling Address with Commander Bookseller in Chief Peter Valley, signing off.